Welcome to Humbly the Best Celtics podcast. I'm your host, Brandon, here with Mike and Joel, three diehard fans and friends breaking down each game throughout the season for you. The journey to Banner 18.
Peyton Pritchard is back. A little home cooking, boys. That's all he needed. Get him home, get him on home court. And Peyton Pritchard is a new man. It is like Jordan in his prime came back when the 4-5 and to play games with used to aim at you to blow you to smithereens. That's what he did. He came back hitting shots, handing out dimes like candy. And it's not even Halloween still. So Peyton Pritchard playing his role. Good to see him come off that terrible road streak that he had of scoreless games and come back, play his role. And it's good to see him back hitting shots.
The question is, what does Sam Hauser have to do to lead the podcast? The man is shot been automatic.
We'll give Joel the opening
Five-
next week for Sam Hauser.
Yeah, exactly.
5 games in a row.
I'm glad Peyton Pritchard's playing better for Mike's mental health. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
it's like the Celtics are winning.
I would never live it down.
Yeah, Peyton's playing bad, but the Celtics are winning. It doesn't even matter for Mike anymore. So no, I mean,
look like Curry during the preseason, 30-point games, pulling off from logo, and then just disappears for the first 7 games.
I don't know about all that, but huge comeback week for Pritchard. Obviously just the way he's impacted the game. One of my biggest problems with Pritchard, I've always harped about, was like if his shots weren't falling, he was absolutely useless. I wouldn't even say his shot's completely there yet. You're at the level we've seen him shoot before, but the defense, the full court press, the reboundings, the steals, the passes, just the plays and the heart and hustle that he's bringing to the court has been absolutely huge this week, especially coming off our first set of back-to-back losses. But yeah, I mean, huge week for Peyton Pritchard and Mike Irvine. That was huge.
Yeah, I don't know who needed it worse, Mike or Peyton Pritchard.
50-50.
Who was getting it worse? I mean,
Peyton.
Maybe Pritchard on Twitter, but
yeah.
It just goes to show you when you get something from the bench, how different the team looks. Like 2 straight losses, and we got absolutely nothing from the bench. Not that Jalen, Jason, or even Drew played that great in the game against the Sixers, but we get something off the bench and the team looks unstoppable again. So it's good to see some contribution from those guys for sure.
Yeah. I just like Pritchard playing in his role, because I don't think every night you're not, obviously we don't need him to score 20 a game, but I think he's playing his role to the best of his ability most nights, which again, he's got to defer to Brown and Tatum when on the court. So I think he's just trying to make his job. I think his role is to push the ball, play solid defense, and get guys good looks. Because I think he's gotten really good at that, driving and kicking out. Tonight he had a cross-court pass, I think, to Brown, found him, and just multiple times, I think, just kind of being in the right place, getting those extra offensive rebounds. I think it just adds that big spark that we needed off our bench.
Yeah. One thing I've enjoyed watching this year is Tatum and Pritchard have had some great runs together. Obviously Tatum, we're seeing him really shine this year. So that's huge. That speaks to itself, it's him becoming a leader and taking that next step, just making guys better around him. He instills obviously Pritchard with confidence, but they're just starting to really play well together. And then you're starting to see Pritchard really start to work well with that bench role. We had a huge Cornette game. Him and Cornette played well together, things like that. They've got their alley-oop connection and all that kind of stuff. So it's good to see him fit in with those guys. I mean, obviously we're banking on him for big minutes this year, unlike last year. So definitely big. Celtics come off two pretty crazy week. Obviously, we had that Minnesota game we talked about last week, and then we respond back with a real bad Philly game. We just did not look good. One thing I'll say this year though is last year I felt like we had those like really bad shooting games, and we would just get destroyed. It was just like, it was one of those games where it's just completely frustrating watching the Celtics. We're like, why aren't they taking it to the hoop? The threes aren't falling. Obviously, yeah, they're losses. It's early in the season. It's 2 losses. But what I enjoyed was that both games were horrible shooting nights for us. And one game we lose in overtime. Anthony Edwards goes off. The next game, we lose by 3 points. Obviously, a huge run there at the end. But I feel like games like that last year were games that we weren't even in that game at all. Like when shots weren't falling, and we would just say, "Oh, it wasn't our night." But it's like in order to be great, you got to find ways sometimes. Obviously, yeah, we still lost, but being that much closer to winning on bad shooting nights against really good teams. I mean, Minnesota's a top team in the league right now, and obviously Philly's probably one of the hottest teams in the league right now. That's. I mean, I think that just shows kind of the strength of this team, and obviously the growing and maturity and things like that, and just finding ways to win, and credit obviously Joe Mazzulla and things like that. So two losses. We respond back. Both are on the road. We come back home. We've had 3 games at home, and we take care of business at home. Last year or two, we have not taken care of home court, and this year we're doing that. We're taking care of home court, respecting the Garden like we should have, which is great to see. Take care of the Nets at home. I think I love playing the Nets now. Like ever since the Kyrie thing, I think Joel alluded when we previewed the Nets, like obviously Kyrie stepping on Lucky. Like we just absolutely handle the Nets every time we play them now. It's like just a free win on the calendar. And then a great game against Toronto, and then a huge game against the Knicks tonight. They're just always a tough matchup every time we play them, and just a massive, massive game. Joel, how are you liking the Knicks win?
Yeah, you love to see wins like that. And just going to what you're saying, when the threes aren't falling, like still being competitive. I think throughout the first few games of the season, we kind of saw that where they turn those games into wins. And even at stretches tonight, when threes aren't falling, we still find a way to have decent offense, which is just a huge upgrade from last year. Because last year, I think we consider Missoula ball like all threes and nothing else. And now there's a much more design in the offense, it looks like, where they're running sets, they're running plays. You can see, and not saying that they didn't last year, but it felt like a lot of times we just settled for contested threes or low percentage threes. But now you can see like the purpose and intentionality in the offense and in the defense too, which you love to see that too, like the 2-1-2 press that they ran, the zone that they ran out of nowhere. Just solid. I think it was a solid game. I think Tatum obviously is the story of it, but Joe called a great game. If you're to steal from football or anything, like he really had a great game tonight too. I love the lineup, love the rotations. I think it was an A+ game all around.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean Tatum closing out. We've done a really good job this year of finally closing out games. Keep repeating like, hey, this is what we didn't do last year. But that's what we want to see. Like, what did we work on last year? That was our weaknesses, and closing out games was one of them. And this year we've just seen a really good job of us closing out games, especially big games like this. Finishing a pretty big homestand, getting back in the win column while at home, taking care of home court, all that. But yeah, I mean, that was a huge game. I love what I'm seeing from Porzingis too. Just finding mismatches all the time. Obviously on the defensive end, what we see from him, he's just like that paint presence that we haven't had. I mean, obviously people weren't really fearing, most of the time Al Horford when Rob was mostly out. They weren't gonna fear Al in the paint. But Porzingis, you do. We saw some pretty big blocks. He's been doing better at his foul management there. Had kind of a sloppy third with some fouls tonight, but other than that, it's been a lot better on that end. But I just love like what he brings to our team, just like a total different aspect. How many times he posted up like a guy like Mitchell Robinson, like a great shot blocker like him, posted him up and just took him to work, and just faster than him, and took him with speed, things like that. So I love what he's bringing to the table. And then when you have nights like guys like Derek White, who just can't shoot the ball tonight, finally hit one in the fourth quarter, but he brings that on the defensive end. And that's the benefit of having so many good scoring starters. Even Holiday kind of got going late. But how much they impact the game with their defense is needed. And then you can rely on a Tatum, a Brown, a Porzingis, things like that. So not having to rely on just those guys as much is absolutely huge.
I think that's the mismatch hunting is another thing throughout the offense that you see a lot more than we have in years past. And it might be a Joe thing, it might be a Tatum thing, but really Tatum and KP, you see it a lot where they're not afraid to turn their back to the basket and take a smaller guy to the hoop. And even Drew, I mean, we saw some of that from Smart, and we loved like that type of offense out of Smart, but Drew just feels more consistently doing that, like finding the smaller guy, overpowering them, getting in the basket, getting a high percentage look, or a foul out of it. So really puts pressure on the defense. You love seeing that and having that in your back pocket when threes aren't falling.
Yeah, I don't think we have last year we had they did those long scoring droughts. We don't have that as much this year, where we would go 5-6 plays down the court and not score. So frustrating,
4 minutes without a basket.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, I think Porzingis just changes the game for us, especially on the high pick and roll. Like, what do you do when Tatum and him are in the pick and roll?
It makes
Yeah.
Jalen
How
look
do you
like a great
defend that?
passer.
Yeah, because like, Porzingis can roll to the hoop or he can step back to the three and get a switch there sometimes too. That Tatum again is to his advantage, and Tatum going downhill this year is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
That
Weaving
one,
through guys.
yeah, 1-on-5 tonight took the whole team, and they were jumping and they didn't know where he was going, and he just finished so strong. Like I love watching him drive the hoop to the hoop and get those and ones, and like it just puts so much pressure on the defense. And then something I noticed with him tonight, he had a team high 7 assists.
Yeah.
So a lot of times he was driving, he'd kick out, or he's just making the easy play. And that's the next thing I'd like Tatum to really focus on. That's what makes LeBron so great, I think, is his extra passing and his ability to get all of his teammates involved. I think if he does that, this team is just absolutely unstoppable.
Yeah, especially, and I think he's done a lot better job with two things. One, he's getting to that post, and obviously we see him with the post moves. We saw him go at Harden multiple times, where he just goes right over top of him. And obviously we've heard all offseason that was something Sam Cassell was working on him with. But last year, oftentimes we would see Tatum he's finishing better in the post. But the other thing that's been great with Tatum is that when he's getting doubled in the post, he's making those passes. And last year, how many times did we see him kind of get stuck in that post and kind of get jammed in the corner? When got that double team, kind of panic and would just kind of whip it out or get trapped himself, lose the ball. And yeah, I mean, obviously assists tonight, we're racking up for him, but he's doing such a better job at a passing out of really all double teams. Joel, I'll give you one tonight. I'll shock you, and I bet you enjoy. Was Brown's 6 assists.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like having guys at the 5 that can stretch the floor or finish at the hoop. Because, I mean, when you look at the Celtics, we had that last year, but it was with 2 players, right? Either Al or Rob. Getting that from one player is a huge deal because when Brown is putting pressure on the rim, the fall back to the 3 with when you come over to help for a KP to wide open 3. Or if you lay off the switch and KP drives to the hoop, the alley oop that he throws to KP, they're just great. They look great. And I mean, we've seen a couple articles come out this week where they're really working on their chemistry. I think KP had comments about it after last game that's something that they're working on and that they think could be a huge part of the offense going forward. It's great to see because for a long time, Jaylen Brown has been a really bad assist to turnover ratio player, and it really impacted him from as far as metrics, like impact metrics point of view. So good to see him actually making plays. And not speaking hyperbolic, but all around, it just seems like he's making better reads and finding guys in better spots than he has in years past. He still has issues with turnovers, as we saw a couple times tonight. But
yeah, sometimes it's just I think his decision making sometimes is pretty bad. Driving, kind of coming up the floor quick with pace often, and they've got teams got 3 players back, and he's got his team behind him, and he just kind of goes for it, wants to go dunk on them because obviously he's vicious with the rim. So decision making could be better. There's no doubt about that, and I think that would help him clean up some of his turnover issues. But I mean, as far as him, I mean, he's had some huge games already this year, and things like that. So great to see. Now, how about Sam Hauser? Joel alluded to him earlier, but my goodness, that guy has found a role on the Celtics right now. I mean, we're giving him minutes, 21 minutes tonight, 4-6 from 3. The other night, man, I think it was against Toronto, maybe the Nets, where he pump faked, took a step to the side, and hit that 3. Remind me of kind of like Duncan Robinson in his prime. I know that was pretty short, but when Duncan Robinson, like, he killed us all the time. Yeah, when he would kill us all the time with that, right? Like, what we've seen from Hauser before, and we talked about it like in the first podcast, was like if he kind of catches the ball, if he's open, he could shoot it. If he can't, that was really it. It was a dish out, and it was like, man, that's going to really limit him. But seeing him take like that pump fake, step to the side, guys are going to blow by him. I mean, a guy shooting 4 or 6 for threes. This year, he's shooting like over 50% from 3. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. I mean, you're hot right now. Keep it rolling. But he's contributing. big time scoring off our bench, which is huge and something the Celtics need, almost averaging 10 points a game, maybe after tonight, almost getting over that.
Let me read you the last 7 games. So basically going into December, against the Pacers 17, Brooklyn 5, and then Minnesota 11, Sixers 13, Brooklyn 15, Toronto 12, New York 12.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what we need, hovering right around almost like 12. I would have to think he's averaging 12.5 probably in December, and just scorching. I mean, 4-6, 4-6, 5 of 10, 3 of 6, 3 of 8, 1 of 2, 5 of 6. I mean, those are lethal numbers.
With how he started the season, and I think we talked about it, how cold he was. He's still at almost 48% from 3. That's insane. So he's giving the spacing, the scoring that we need from the bench, but also he's holding his own on the defensive end. And it was one of the things that I think Celtics fans overstated last year, like, oh, he can hold his own on the defensive end. But you saw it multiple times tonight. Jalen Brunson would try to go at him, and he couldn't finish over him. Randall would try and go through him. Try and go through him. And it's one of those things that I think is partially because he's not as bad as everyone says he is, but also like guys just go out of their way to try and find it, and they take the offense out of rhythm, and it turns into harder shots because he's actually a halfway decent defender. I wouldn't put him good or elite, but he can hold his own, which is really all you need from
The thing is too, when you're that efficient, I mean, think of tonight, right? He's 4 of 6. He took 6 shots and put up 12 points. You're talking, he's averaging 2 points a shot. I mean, you're only having to find the guy, right? We want to have a scorer if your bench is going to put up 10 to 12 points a game. And then on top of that, you only have to find him 6 shots a night to do that. I mean, that's huge. That's a huge impact from a guy to come off. And of course, we pay him pennies. I mean, to have just an efficient shooter like that, I mean, hopefully he keeps the hot hand, but we've been seeing some great things from him in the last couple of weeks. And that is huge for the Celtics to have that on our bench. It reminds me exactly like I've always wanted Sam Hauser to be, and that's Eddie House. Eddie House was so big for that team. And to have a guy like Eddie House on the Celtics this year, it's exactly what you need. That's the role I've always wanted Hauser to take. You can put that guy in, give him 4 to 6 shots a night, and he's hitting a couple huge threes for you.
And I think it's from a forward position too, so that spacing is even
100%.
more critical.
Mm-hmm.
One thing too is, it just as a funny thing, his points per shot attempt. So the amount of points he scores per 100 shot attempts, 145.2 right now on the season. That puts him in the 98th percentile. So there's only 2% of players in the NBA that are better.
Yeah, he shot 20% from 3 in October, and then in November he's at 55%. He's had one game in November under 50%, and that was against Minnesota. He shot 3 of 8.
No one could hit. Yeah, and the thing with Hauser too, which is just crazy, is like he never hits the rim. It's just this rainbow 3 that has this crazy arc, just straight net, and which is huge for the crowd. Like he's bringing the energy for the team. Like having a guy like him, he's hitting shots efficiently, and then just bringing that energy. The crowd's gonna feed off things like that. It's absolutely huge. And then I mean, to Joel's point, to have a forward like that too, that he's gonna be able to space the floor. But then on top of that, you got guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown that are able to play on the court at the same time as him, Kristaps Porzingis. It's like, go ahead, sag off and help on Tatum, and you're leaving Sam Hauser, who's shooting better than Tatum right now. I mean, that's insane.
He has 4 turnovers on the year.
I mean, he doesn't dribble,
he just
but
he doesn't
put the ball on the floor.
He has 5 dribbles. He's like Klay Thompson. But
right, it's true. That is true. Valid point.
Oh, man. Yeah, but no, that was, I mean, having players like him, especially with Al, like last year we banked on Al like big time for threes. We went in the playoffs, Al was ice cold, and that hurt, and this year we're not seeing much production from Al. I still, I value him for his veteran presence and all that stuff. I want Al to win the ring with us, and I think Al's going to have some big important roles with us. I think Al's big for back-to-backs, letting, especially when we get into the season, we already saw him sit out that one. We saw Porzingis not sit out, which kind of surprised me, not one of the back-to-backs. But, I think that's going to be big to allow Porzingis to kind of rest more minutes on the weaker back-to-back game. I'm fine with him playing, but allowing Al to use more minutes and things like that. And we talked before, people will be out, things like that. But having a guy like Hauser coming off the bench to hit threes on top of that is just huge. But That's huge. So week ahead, we got Philadelphia Sixers again. Man, I'd love a win on the road again. We just played them down in Philly, took the L. Horrible shooting game. Porzingis led the way with 29 points. I think Tatum had like 15 rebounds in that game. But, going back down there to answer, Maxi's just gotten better since. And I think he's gotten like a whole leap better just in the week we've been gone from them. But going back there would just be huge for the Celtics to respond, just especially to that loss to them exactly a week ago from that game. So that'll be a big game against them. And then it's a 4-game road trip we got going on now. So then we go up to Toronto. Obviously just played Toronto the other day. And I think I don't expect us to hopefully have a problem. And then I'm excited about this one. Sunday playing the Grizzlies. Obviously the Grizzlies are no good, but playing Marcus Smart, I think it would be pretty special to see him again. Feel bad for him in the situation he's even in. But just to see him. I'm out there. You guys see the Smart play the other day, him diving on the floor, smacking the ball. Just love and trust. I think
Typical
I commented
play.
on someone's thing, like, you guys will learn to love and trust. He had a couple games ago, the behind the back pass, just the love and trust of Marcus Smart. So I'm excited to play him. And then the famous, I feel like Charlotte, we play like every like slow Monday on a Charlotte. I think Tatum has like a famous line talking about playing Charlotte on a Monday and how he's always going to play no matter what. So excited to I think it's a pretty big road trip again of 4 games, starting out big with Philly and even Toronto, and then hopefully 2 games, that, not saying you could take the foot off the pedal, but I think everyone expects the Celtics to be able to win. I'm hoping, especially on a road trip, guys can rest. We can give that bench more minutes. I want to see some more Lamar Stevens, some Brissett, even some Banton, players like that, just on the court, because then you're playing, Milwaukee the day before Thanksgiving. So I think it would be good to hopefully get ahead big in those games and get some bench minutes going. Games like that, you really do want to kind of see who we can use from the bench. I mean, we've seen from Joe, he's using 8 guys a night. Like, we're running playoff rotations, which is fine, but it's like, those games, then we got to take care of business, and then those games are the games when we're playing those weaker teams. I want to see the bench then. Like, I'm all for winning the big games this year. Like, it's like last year, like, how mad were we when we lost 2 in a row to the Magic last year? And it was like, the Magic aren't going to see us in the playoffs. But the teams that we're going to play in the playoffs, like, I'm fine with, hey, well, let's win this. Top of that, it's like, hey, I want to beat Philly. I want to beat the Knicks. I want to beat Minnesota next time we play them. So I'm fine playing those guys heavier. But those games that we should take care of business, let's take care of business and get that bench in. And rest those guys get off the court.
Circle that Charlotte game. Someone's having a huge game that night. Either Tatum, Brown, Porzingis, somebody's putting up some crazy numbers. But yeah, it should be a great coming back after Philly. Let's see how they answer. Right now, It seems like we're getting more from the bench, so we should have some contributions there. Tatum looks back to both pre-game. I guess that was really like his worst game of the season. Jalen's had better nights since then, so really we're looking to see them be themselves, because that was a really out of character game, that Philly game, until the last 4 minutes of the game, last 3 minutes. What was it that they actually played decent?
The one thing that stuck out to me was in that game. I mean, you can look at the box scores. Horford was like a -23. I mean, he was just getting eaten alive out there. And usually he loves playing Embiid. He loves, that matchup. I think we said on the podcast that we expected like a huge Horford game, and it was horrible. I mean, he was 1 for 6, -23. So I'm interested to see kind of how he responds to that. Kind of hoping like, those games where you like kind of take it personal. One of my biggest problems with that Philly game as well was that, Tatum had 14 shots. That's not enough. Like, he's our star. Derek White's taken 18 shots that game. Even Porzingis has taken 19. Brown 13. Like, you got to find ways to get Tatum shots. Coaches, players, Tatum himself, like, he has to get shots. And 14 is not going to cut it. I mean, 14 shots, he finished with 16 for the game. He obviously had 15 rebounds, 6 assists. He was only a -1. But it's like, we need to get Tatum shots. I mean, he's our leader. He's our bucket. I mean, we saw it tonight. So I'm hoping we can get him buckets. Hauser had a huge game against them, 5 of 8. So that was one of his big
I mean,
games.
come on. Of course he did. And for the plus minus king, Jason Tatum to be negative, that's huge. I mean, even in losses, he's finishing positive
Yeah.
most of the time. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'd love to see a more characteristic game where the offense just looked clunky. And the other thing too is the first time versus these new look Sixers, right? So some of that I think you could chalk up to not being used to or not knowing what to expect with these guys, but now they have game film. They know what to look at. They know what their matchups are going to be. So I'd
Yeah.
really like to see a bounce back from them. I'm expecting it too.
I think too, I want to see in this game is going to be we have the best defensive, guards in the NBA, right? Maxi's obviously unreal. I'm not saying you're going to stop him and he's going to score 10 points, but I would love to just see a Celtics like White Holiday game where they just really impact the game on that defensive end on Maxi, making him uncomfortable all night, not letting him play his game. I think that, especially against a Philly team that's just hot right now, Maxi's feeling it. He feels at the top of the NBA. Would just be a huge response from the Celtics to get two guys like that who, hey, you guys are like the top, by far the best defensive guards in the NBA. All right, well, here you go. Here's the hottest guard in the NBA. What can you do against him? How
Yeah,
uncomfortable can you make him feel?
I would take, and I think we could take clues from tonight, like how they matched up against Quickly. They're similar players, and I'm not saying that Quickly's on the same stratosphere right now as Maxi, but their play styles are really similar. Where they push the pace, they're fast guards, small, they can shoot, and they love getting to the rim and free throw line. And tonight, I mean, they did a great job on Quickly, who usually is a killer against us. He was 1 from 10 from the field and shot 4 free throws. So really something that I think we could take some clues from tonight on what they're going to do against them, or at least what I'm hoping the performance will be like.
Yeah. I would like to just see the Celtics, this week, especially with those later games, add one more piece to that bench of someone that's on our bench right now. I'm not talking trade for agency, but we've got some good guys on that bench, and I would like to see one of them get into kind of the rotation of a couple minutes, whether it's Brissett back. Brissett's shot had been really struggling. I know the energy, but at some point you got to hit a shot. So I do get that side with Joe with not seeing him. His shot has just been, not there at all. I think he's hit 2 shots like all year, something crazy like that. So we don't want to Ben Simmons on the court, but I want someone that can contribute some minutes. Maybe it's just 10 minutes a night, but I would love to see a Lamar Stevens. I mean, the guy started games last year for the Cavs, and he's sitting on our bench. I had high hopes for Steven Mihalicic, but he came in that game against, I think it was the Nets. It was horrible.
Chucking them up.
Yeah, just every time he caught the ball, just chucking it up, which was pretty rough. But I would like to see somebody get kind of added into the rotation and see. I would love Quetta to come back. I mean, his foot has been bothering him, I guess, all season. But I was really excited about him and fighting Cornette for that position. Putting Cornette, he had a great week as well in the games he appeared in. But seeing maybe like a guy like Quetta maybe make an appearance on this road trip, something like that. But adding another guy, I think, would be pretty big. Obviously we've established the Hauser, the Horford, the Pritchard, the Cornette on matchup nights that is gonna make a difference. But adding in maybe another guy.
Part of that, I think part of that though, like to give Joe credit, is when Pritchard and Hauser started off the year not playing well at all, he gave them time to figure out to get some minutes, to get a rhythm going. And I feel like Brissett had a couple minutes and they didn't play for 2-3 games. So I think there's something to be said about having a couple games under your belt consecutively where you get 10, 12 minutes that I think will help him kind of find a rhythm, find his place in the offense, and make more of an impact. Because he's definitely there with the hustle and the offensive rebounds. I just think he needs to, again, they need to give him a couple more minutes to give Tatum and Brown a little bit more of a rest, I think.
That's why I think handling that, like, obviously Philly game all out, play Tatum 48 minutes if you want. Like, I'm not losing to Philly again. But those next 3 games, Toronto, Charlotte, Memphis, like those 3 games are games I would love to just see what we got on that bench again and just kind of give those guys minutes. Even like you said, Brissett, let's see him what he could do. Even a Banton with, seeing him out there, like he is a big guard and like what that could help us with would be huge. Having a big guard like that. So I'd be interested. Hopefully we can get those guys minutes. Obviously that comes first with our starters taking care of business early in those games and coming out with energy.
What known about it though is it's not like anyone is playing an inordinate amount of minutes right now. No one tonight.
Sure, yeah.
We played 8 players, and no one was over 40 minutes. 39 was team high, and that was Tatum, which he's going to play 39 minutes every 38 somewhere. He's going to play somewhere between 37 and 40 minutes a night. So
yeah, I think even Porzingis, like, there's been nothing about like, hey, you gotta protect him and all that kind of stuff. But like, reality is, right? Like, we need Porzingis come the playoffs, or this team's not winning it. So you gotta have Porzingis healthy, and I think we've done a pretty good job at managing his minutes. I mean,
yeah, he's at
33. That might have been one of his highest nights. A lot of times he's like high 20s.
The thing
about big
about Porzingis lately is he's been managing his own minutes with foul trouble. So
yeah. Well, that's fine. Whatever keeps him down at this point. But yeah, this year he averages 29.8 minutes per game. Yeah. So I mean, keeping him down. Yeah, I mean Tatum's pretty reliable. Fingers crossed, knock on wood. But guys like that, can handle those minutes. I'm all for that. I mean, and that now you're giving guys like tonight, Horford 22 minutes. Pritchard 19 minutes, Hauser 21 minutes. And I like when we're giving those guys more minutes. I feel like when Pritchard can play those 20 minutes, like he fits in, he's not like as rushed, like I'm only going to get 5 minutes tonight, like so I might as well chuck up the shots now. I feel like he's like letting the game more come to him as we've trusted him more and giving him more minutes. Even guys like, Hauser, of course those guys are going to have pressure thinking, Joe's just giving me 5 minutes. I got to put up some shots so I can gain myself some more minutes. But at this point, I think they're realizing like, hey, this team's really going to rely on you guys. Like, play your game. That's why you're here. And that's why you're getting the minutes.
I think Peyton is playing as well himself back onto the floor where it was like Joe was kind of searching at points. I think throwing in Stevens, throwing in Brissett and stuff like that, trying to get someone to make an impact. But being able to pick his spots, I think Pritchard is just much better. You didn't really see it tonight where he got stuck underneath the rim because he went all out like a launched out of a cannon. You know what I mean? He was able to pick his spots a little bit better. That shot he hit over, who was that over? That it looked like it was going to get blocked, that 3. That was nasty too. Like he was just able to pull the trigger when he needed to and he make an impact when he did. So really loved it.
Let me ask you guys this. Joe Mazzulla, we're just a couple games in. Obviously, many critics hard. A lot of people are pretty hard on Joe last year, as his first year, kind of getting thrown in the job. But if you were to grade him right now, you're Brad Stevens, calling him into his office to give him a quick grade, just a couple games in, a couple weeks in. I mean, what kind of grade are you guys giving Joe Mazzulla? Mike, want to kick it off?
So put some thought into this. I think we talked before and it was an A-, and I don't really have a whole lot negative to say. I was frustrated with his lack of timeouts during that Minnesota game going into overtime. I thought he should have called one there. And I feel like that's changed over the last few games. Tonight there was a key point in the game during a free throw that we called the timeout with a few minutes left to kind of gather the troops, make sure we finish strong, and I thought we did. I give him credit for giving Hauser and Pritchard continued minutes, even though they were struggling, and trusted them and gave them that extra, belief. I think he talked to the locker room and really preached at them to keep going and to, we'll get it figured out, and really gave them that, I think empowered them. And I think that was part of where ever since then, I feel like they played better. So I give him credit for sticking with those guys, and that faith is really, proven itself with the bench. So
what's your grade? A-?
I think I'll go with an A. I don't really have anything. Right. I would give an A+ if we were undefeated. But we have those, back-to-back losses against tough opponents, which I wish we could have pulled those out. But overall, again, nothing glaring that I'm going to harp on him for, which I've harped on him in the past.
Let me ask you this. Maybe I should have asked in the beginning. What would you have gave him at the end of last year?
I would have given him a B.
A B.
I wasn't happy with his rotations. I wasn't happy with his just the crazy. Dude, let's redo 100 years of basketball and not call timeouts and let your team figure it out. Like there's just times where you just gotta give that team. You gotta give the team rest or and just how many times like in games past that teams call timeouts and they go on a run right after they call a timeout.
Yeah,
Like you
just taking
got to
taking the
refocus
crowd out
them,
of it
give them a
sometimes.
breather, draw up a play, like, and it just kind of gets them back into rhythm, and it stops the other team's momentum too. So that I think was my biggest frustration. I think he's got them playing harder and better on defense. I think we're probably top 5 in the NBA in points allowed, which is a real big, I think, emphasis of a championship team. You got to hang your hat on something. So I'm hoping they can lead the league eventually by the end of the year. I think they got the unit to do it.
Yeah. Joel, what kind of grade would you give Joe last year and now this year?
So for last year, I think Mike is generous giving him B because I think that's better. And honestly, I think that's better than what the Celtics would have given him, better than what Brad in the front office would have given him coming out of the year. I think if they don't go on that run in the Heat series, he's not the coach this year. So, honestly, at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season, I probably would have been somewhere like B plus. Coming into the postseason and just seeing how he got outmatched and out game managed, I'd definitely downgrade that farther. Maybe a C for the C's. I don't know. I don't know if I could be that negative and go much lower than that. But and my problem with Joe is he's always taking himself out of the game, right? Where he's not managing the game through timeouts, drawing up plays, which he's pretty good at. Like I give him credit for being able to draw up plays out of timeout. It feels like they can always get a good look after a timeout or after a dead ball or something like that. So I think Joe can be a good coach, and we've seen that this year, right? He's got a full off season, which he didn't have going into the year last year. He's got a good staff, which he didn't have last year. He had guys that were leftovers that didn't go elsewhere, and that didn't come there to work with him. They came there to work with Ime. Now, if we're talking about this year, are we grading the curve against what Ime's doing with the Rockets or just for the Celtics?
Dude, forget Ime. I don't even want to talk about that guy. I don't care if Tatum's friends with him or not. I'm done with that guy.
I'm just glad that Joe stopped chewing the gum obnoxiously on the sideline. I mean, that alone gives me almost an A plus.
Yeah.
So here's my thing. I don't think you can do worse than an A for Joe right now because the team's offensive rating, right? We know the firepower that they have, but their offensive rating going in before tonight's game, they were at 119 points per 100 possessions, right? That's huge. Their differential was like 40 points almost. So they're only allowing like 89 points per 100 possessions. So really, I think an A is fair. And like Mike said, if they were undefeated, we're talking about an A plus. If they had one loss and it didn't feel like Joe kind of contributed to the loss in Minnesota, I probably would still give him an A plus if they were 9-1. Because I mean, bad shooting nights, they're going to happen, and there's not much the coach can do to change bad shooting.
Yeah, we fought back into that in that Sixers game.
And I feel like he was able to manage the game to give us opportunity to come back in that game too, which is even more of a critique for the Minnesota game. They didn't call a timeout near the end of regulation to drop a play. He didn't call a timeout when Anthony Edwards starting to get ungodly hot against us. And he didn't call a timeout to drop a play on offense in the last few possessions. So I would say A, and I think that's a fair grade. I think it's also well earned with the team's performance so far this year and just kind of the levers that he's pulled. I mean, even in the game tonight, and I think we already mentioned it, switching to the zone, switching to the full court press just to change things up and give the Knicks a different look on offense to try and junk things up and steal a possession here and there is huge. And his reviews have been pretty good this year too. So not using that like 4 seconds into the game.
So as a Celtics fan, I think all my friends especially know it. Like I will defend anyone with the Boston Celtics. Like I can take it to an extreme. You know, I'll defend Joe Mazzulla to anyone that hates on the Celtics last year, up and down, right? And inside, I'm frustrated. So I gave myself a pep talk to like not before we even came on. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be real with this. Like last year, there was so many times I was just like, and I want to say like I got to get rid of this guy. Like this guy is never going to coach me to a championship. Like it's just not going to happen. He's not there. Like he doesn't have that coaching mind. And this year is totally different. Like I think I watched Joe improved a ton just alone last year. Like throughout the season, he did improve as a coach. Just the different ways he managed. Yeah, we have the timeout situations. The Miami series was a mess. Like when you compared him to like to a Spoelstra and stuff like that, it was like, man, like he's not on the same level. But the man didn't have an offseason. We talked about it. He got his coaches. He got staff. The one thing I love about Joe Mazzulla is the dude's insane. Like the dude is obsessed with the team. He's obsessed with coaching. He's 35 years old. And the dude is coaching a team with a lot of talent. Now you can say, oh, it's easy. He's got a lot of talent. But how many teams in the NBA have a lot of talent right now and they're not winning? The Suns, the Clippers, like there's all these teams in the NBA, the Lakers, they're all not winning teams. And the excuse is, oh, they haven't figured it out yet. Joe Mazzulla is coaching a team that brought in a lot of huge pieces. Yeah, they have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, but then he quickly incorporated Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday and took out a guy like Marcus Smart and had the respect from a guy like Al Horford to go to the bench. So obviously we know he's got that respect in the locker room. One thing I love the other night is he challenged a play, and it was a huge controversial thing. The Raptors got all upset about it, but he challenged that play when the bench was in. Game was over. We're up like 27 points, and he challenges the play. But like the dude's insane. The guy like loves his players and puts like the players know that he's going to put it on the line, and he's coaching the game. I never see that guy sit down and coach. We're up 30 points against the Raptors, and he's challenging plays. He's coaching. He's yelling at guys. Like he's coaching everybody. And that's what it's about. Like, I hate when I see coaches and the players, like our players do a great job of it. They're always standing up, cheering on that bench squad at the end of games in those fourth quarters against blowout games like the Wizards and the Pacers. And it comes from the top. Joe Mazzulla is standing there coaching like the game is on the line. And it just seemed great things. Joel talked about coming out tonight in the zone. We've seen him come out this year in a 2-1-2 zone. We've seen him come out in a 3-2 zone, a 2-3 zone. He's come out in zones off of those, and it's for like 3 or 4 plays. Charles Lee, I think, is a huge compliment to that. Tonight we see us come out 2-1-2 zone. We get a huge stop, and Charles Lee jumps off the bench, and he's like clapping down the court at the guys. Like obviously they drew that up and said, "Hey, this is gonna work." They go out there and it works. Then this year, Joel always talks about like on the offensive end. Joe's calling timeouts and we're scoring. Brad was terrible at that. Like we would never score. It was like, what? Like that's what we came up with off a timeout. Like, and it would just be in the middle of the game. Joe Mazzulla, I feel like every time we call a timeout and we got the ball, like we're scoring the ball. It's insane. There's great plays. Like he's coaching his mind out right now. Yeah, we still have like the game or two. We could say like what's going on with the timeouts. He's got he still calls like the timeout, the missing timeout. And then the other night we had a timeout. I think it was against the Nets where it was like Pritchard was on a fast break and Pritchard was like, "Are you serious? Like you just called that timeout?" So yeah, I'd give him an A because there's those little things. But I'm loving what I'm seeing from Joe. Like I feel like he is living, breathing, eating the Boston Celtics basketball and the coaching right now. He's got help on the bench from the guys behind him. But I just absolutely love what I'm seeing from Joe. It's been huge this year. And the team needs it to win. You can have all the talent in the world. We've seen that year after year, but a coach is needed. And I absolutely love what I'm seeing from Joe.
100%.
Yeah, I think Charles Lee, going back to the 08 season, right? Something that always stuck out to me was Tibbs. Tibbs was like our defensive coordinator. Right? Yeah. And I feel like Charles Lee, you have to have that guy who preaches defense and who gets excited about making defensive plays and is just, you have to have that guy. And I don't think we've had that guy in years. And we also have the team that can play elite defense. So I think if you have the right guy preaching it all the time, like Lee, I feel like that's his role right now. Is to get the team to play defense.
Yeah, I love that, Mike. And the thing is too, like you got guys like Joe Mazzulla, right? We call it Joe Mazzulla ball. Like his game is offense, right? Ime was, and I hate saying his name, Ime was defense. Like the defense was crazy. And Joe had the team going with defense was rolling starting at the end of last year and things like that. But at the end of the day, Joe's thing is offense. I mean, he draws up great plays out of it, out of timeouts. The team just is Joe Mazzulla offense is just crazy. We're putting up 130 points. Like it's nothing. But now you add in a guy, we get him a guy like Charles Lee, who's one of the next head coaches in the league, who's a great defensive coach, and then you get a guy like Sam Cassell, who's helping your star become a leader. What he's doing with Tatum is unreal, and adding in different parts of Tatum's game, and obviously he's got the Celtics culture, the championship with him. Like Brad did an awesome job getting him the pieces to help Joe Mazzulla succeed. Right, a lot of times we're just like, the GMs just kind of look down, and it's just huge credit to Brad. He's got his great pieces, but you look at guys like, it's just like, oh, it's the coach's fault, get rid of him, right? Joe believes heavily in Joe and instills in him power. Like, a lot of people scratch their heads when we gave Joe Mazzulla that contract, that all-star break. It was like, man, why did we already give him that contract, right? And I defended it, but at times it was like, why in the world did we just sign this guy to a long-term deal? But it gave Brad gave him confidence. Like, hey, you're going to the playoffs, and I believe in you. And Joe's doing the same thing with our players. And he gets them the staff. He's helping them out. The guy's 35 years old, and he's coaching the Boston Celtics, a team absolutely loaded with players and with expectations of it's championship or bust. And he's doing a great job, not cracking under pressure, just living, breathing it. And I love what I'm seeing with Joe Mazzulla, with the bench guys, with all those guys. I mean, if I'm coaching the Boston Celtics, I'm leaning on my 5-6 starters, and it's like, win me games, right? And it's like, if they don't win, like, hey, those guys got to be better. Joe's coaching 15 guys right now, wanting all those guys to succeed. And then on top of that, calling zones, coming out of timeouts. Like, we did not see that stuff last year. And that's like why we lost to a guy like Spoelstra.
Yeah, and just to point to but coming into this game, to your point about the 5 or 6 players that are the impact players, there are 2 lineups that the Celtics have more than 100 possessions going before the game tonight. And I doubt that there was anything that jumped up between just from this game. But there's only 2 lineups that have more than 100 possessions. And to clean up something I said earlier, I said that the team's offensive rating and defensive ratings were those numbers. That's the 5-man starting lineup is 129 points per 100 possessions, and then only 87.2 points allowed per possession. And that lineup has 250 possessions. That's what you want. You want your best players playing the most and balancing, obviously, at this point in the season, not overdoing it on them. And he's done I feel like a great job of that, letting the guys that actually can impact the game do that and win games. And I mean, 8-2, you can't be too mad at that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we always are going to have that, like, oh, what if we had an Ime still with us? But I'm like, last year I was trying to convince myself, like, I'm over it. Like, we got Joe. It's fine. Like I'm fine. Like, I love Joe Mazzulla. Like, I love this guy as my coach right now. And, I think he's a guy that we can really anchor down with this team. I know it's early in his career with us as a head coach, but I mean, I actually love what he's doing.
So you're ready to move Mazzulla from the rebound coach to long-term?
Oh, 100%. Last year, I was just telling myself that. Like, legitimately, this year, I'm saying that. Ime he's not even with the guys in the playoffs, so we won't even go down that road. So, I mean, forget that. But
and I feel like Joe has a relationship with every player on that team. And I think that's why they're so connected. Everyone knows their role. Even if you're not playing, I'm sure he communicates with them. And I feel like that's made a really big difference in this team's, overall, 1 through 15, I feel like they all have a really good relationship with Joe. I think he prides himself on having that with each player.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like with the Ime stuff happened. But at the end of the day, you can't convince me that, the guy was preaching. His thing was like, he got in there and preached like integrity. He preached like everyone being all in. And then all that stuff comes out and all that stuff happens. Like, you kind of expose yourself a little bit, right? Like, you preach integrity, and then that's going on during the playoffs. I mean, come on. And then you got a guy like Joe coming in, and it's like he's he's there. He's coaching for everybody. He's got everybody's back. One thing I always loved, like Brad, I would always get on him. Brad's a 10 times better GM than he was coach in my mind. But Brad was always so quiet, and it was like, one thing I see Joe doing a lot better is like, Tatum, like, I can't have you racking up technicals, so Joe Mazzulla's out there. Joe Mazzulla's in the ref's ear. He's fighting for the guys for them. He's always listening to the guys about the replays. He's always turning around to Matt Reynolds to review the play. A guy says something, he's looking around. Like every guy knows he's got their back, and you need to have a guy like that. He's a voice for the players, and it's been huge. And then, like you said, just coaching the guys 1 through 15. I don't think there's an unhappy guy in the Celtics right now. And even a guy, there was a lot of stuff about Pritchard last year not getting minutes. Of course, he's a competitor. He's going to be upset about not getting minutes. But for him to sign an extension with the team under Joe, I mean, I that speaks volumes. I mean, about the guy that he wants to stay with a guy like Joe and sign a 4-year deal where, let's be honest, if Pritchard doesn't play, a lot of minutes over the 4 years, what's his career? You know what I mean? Like Pritchard's, I'm sure, wanted to be in this for the long haul. It's not like he just got this massive deal. So he stays with Joe. I mean, it just shows that he had trust in his coach, knowing, he's got him this year, stuff like that. And just, he's always coaching those guys. And I think that's huge.
I just want you to clarify that you're not slandering Brad Stevens as a coach. It's just that the job he's doing as a GM has been an absolute grand slam.
I'd give Brad a B as a coach.
Stop it.
B+.
The man coached through COVID. Like the worst.
Was he a hero?
I mean, I'm telling you, like the guy was in the bubble with these guys, and then he managing players with a shortened schedule. Yeah, that's pretty tough stuff to do. Like to manage those purples. I'm not talking. I mean, we're not getting
20 coaches.
Yeah, but the guy had teams in the playoffs and in the Eastern Conference Finals that had no business being there. In the 1 seed, and their best player is 5'9".
I agree. I'm not saying he's not a bad coach.
Come on. And just because I bring up the word COVID it doesn't mean I'm saying like he's a hero because he survived COVID. What I'm talking about is the schedule that he went through in the grind of being with those guys and being the voice for 10 years in the organization. There's a reason they promoted him, and it wasn't because he was a subpar or average coach. He was a great coach.
I just think his basketball mind is amazing, right? And we're 100%. Seeing that in the role he's in is his role. That is the role he's meant for because he's got that basketball mind. I'm not disagreeing
with you. I just wanted to make sure that you were saying.
I'm not saying he's a bad coach. No, I don't think he's a bad coach, but he's a 10 times better GM than he was coach.
He's a better coach than Ime and Joe.
And I think, when you had Danny Ainge, a guy like Danny Ainge couldn't make a relation with another GM to save his life. It was just like, hey, we got to absolutely screw this guy on a deal or we're not making the deal. Like how many guys did we lose out on because it was like he wanted 15 first-round picks and had to absolutely like skeletonize the team. But Brad makes actual relationships with the guy with GMs, and it's just he's a great GM, and I think that the GM of Joe and Brad is a great duo. I really do. I think they fit well.
They're two humble dudes that just are hardworking. And like you said, I think Brad has such a great basketball mind. And I think you're allowing him to put it on full display as a GM of how he sees basketball, how he understands the pieces. And I mean, just who would have thought Porzingis and Drew Holiday, he would have made that work. I mean, if we want to give grades, I'd give Brad Stevens an A+. With his current, like what he's done this, as far as from coaching staff to bringing in the right
even like not being willing to just keep running it back. Like we want to win it. Like I'm sick of Eastern Conference Finals trips. Like, hey, I want to win it. All right, Marcus Smart, we've run it back 8 times. Like Brad pulls the trigger, and so far it's paid off.
Yeah, so. I agree 100%. I won't stand for Brad slander in any shape or form.
I guess not. Wow.
No.
How about
I was a big
Ime
fan
slander?
of his too.
What?
How about Ime slander?
I mean, the guy could coach basketball. I'm not telling you that you should go to like a church if he starts it.
Wow, that's a good
I think Brad was 2 for 2 with coaches so far. I mean, Brad and management.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, 2 great coaches so far. I mean, obviously, you got great teams, but they're just not, screwing them up like we've seen with the Suns and other teams like that. They have a lot of talent that can't put wins together. So,
all that to say, huge start for the Boston Celtics and Joe Mazzulla. Big game coming up on Wednesday. Hopefully, the Celtics can take care of business in Philly this time. Second trip down there. And we need a win off of them. And then 3 games, Toronto, Memphis, Charlotte. Hopefully we can take care of business. We'll be back next Monday. Hot take right after a Charlotte blowout. Maybe we'll join you at halftime at that game. See you next week.